York Comic Con 2018 with Jock, the legend. And we were talking on the way over here about how you sit in a room and draw all day.
Yeah.
How long do you draw for every day? And are you, I work at a desk job. My job is totally different than a job where I'm pacing myself and I'm creating. So what does your average day as an artist look like nowadays?
I try and treat it as a full-time job. So I tend to go in at about 9:30, 10, and I stay till 6. I have a family, so I try and keep regular hours. When I was starting out, I used to do lots of all-nighters, keep much less kind of strict times and just work when I kind of could and was in the mood. But now, you try and go in every day. But when I'm on a deadline, that can extend into evenings and weekends as well. But it's probably not so different to you. Similar kind of times. Yeah.
Are you still drawing purely like pen and ink, or are you doing anything digital?
So my comics work is still pen and ink, the interior pages, and then if it's a cover, then I'll color it in Photoshop. My film work is all digital because you need to be able to edit it easily. But with comics, I'm still very much pen and ink. I love ink too much. I could never go fully digital.
Yeah. Talk about your film work. What do you do? Are you doing concept art, or what kind of stuff are you doing for film?
Yeah, it started maybe about 10 years ago. I did some work on a movie called Dredd, the Judge Dredd movie.
Yeah.
Met Alex Garland, who was the writer of that movie, and I worked on Ex Machina with him and Annihilation, which just came out last year. And I was a costume designer on Star Wars: The Last Jedi as well. So I did 9 months up at Pinewood working on that. So.
How different is it to create something that you're then handing off to somebody else to produce versus drawing yourself? Because you come up with an idea, you draw it, it goes from your head to your hand to the paper.
Yeah.
It's something like this: you're creating something, you're drawing it, and then you're giving it off to somebody else. Do you feel a certain sense of freedom with that it's out of your hands, or do you feel like that's my baby, they changed something on it?
No, I mean, you can't be too precious about it when it's film work, because you're only ever a cog in the machine with movie work. You have a role to play, and you can absolutely have an influence on the final thing, but essentially as a concept artist, your job is to inspire the people that are going to come after you, to either make the costumes or do the special effects or whatever it might be. And the wonderful thing about comics is, you're right, it's like, what I draw is what people see. Like that's the product. Not to think of it too much in those terms, but that is my drawings are out there for people to see. But so they're just very different disciplines, and I really enjoy doing both for different reasons. I mean, I got to design Luke Skywalker, for Star Wars. I mean, that's who gets to do that? So
that's what I was going to ask you. Is we have a huge Star Wars content on our site.
Right.
All of us have seen The Last Jedi. Okay. When you were watching it, what was the piece that came through most clearly from your head to the screen?
So there was. Well, but when we were working on it, there was talk as to whether Luke would be wearing a new costume on Crate when he's for the Force projection, and they weren't sure whether he was going to stay in his traditional Jedi robes, or maybe have another costume. And the robes look great, but to me, I feel like they're quite. What's the word? They're kind of quite baggy and kind of laden down. And do you remember him in Return of the Jedi when he was a little bit more like ready for business, a bit fitted and everything? And
I remember Return of the Jedi? Come on.
And you never know, So we're having a discussion about the robes, and I had done a bunch of drawings with him wearing his robes, and some with him in slightly variations on the traditional robes. And I just said a lot of the stuff, a lot of the work is very heavily directed. Basically, obviously the costume designer Michael Kaplan has the final say, and it's our job to try and visualize what he wants. But with the Force projection costume. We were talking about it, and I just said, can I try something? I've got an idea, and it was trying to harken back to Jedi a little bit. I went away, did the black robes, pretty much like some of the costumes you can literally do 75 drawings, but I did one drawing. They were like, that looks good, and then I did maybe 4 variations, so maybe about 5 final drawings. And I didn't know it was going to be in the movie until I saw the movie in the theater, and Luke walks out, in that scene, and the next 5 minutes was a very surreal 5 minutes for me, because to answer your question, because I conceived that costume as well as like did the design, the initial design work on it. I mean, obviously the costumers play a massive part in of course, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But because I kind of conceived of that costume, and it's Luke Skywalker, that one is a particularly special one for me. Yeah,
that is amazingly cool. So let's talk about the Batman Who Laughs, the new series you're doing with Scott Snyder. It's funny because you've done a lot of work 2000 AD, and there's a very 2000 AD tone to the character. And when you're designing the character, what were your influences? Was that part of the when you're drawing on the page? Do you have to get into a British comics mindset with that sort of stuff, or do you not think about it as different things at all?
Yeah, so it was actually Greg Capullo designed the Batman Who Laughs, and there were a lot of people said it was slightly like Judge Death, which is a 2000 AD character that I know very, very well.
I know you do.
I'm a big Dredd fan. I grew up reading Dredd. So actually, when Scott called me about doing the series, Judge Death was my sort of touchstone, because I feel like, I mean, they're obviously very different characters, but there's certain touchstones in the tone and the mood. Because when he actually called me and we were supposed to be doing something else, and he said, "Listen, you're probably not going to want to do this, but I'm doing this mini-series of Batman Who Laughs," and I had the feeling like when he first called me about Black Mirror, like I didn't know him back then at all, and I just had a good feeling about him. And he called and said, "I'm doing the Batman Who Laughs," and I was like, "Scott, yes, let's do this." So and Judge Death is definitely in there. I think for me, growing up with 2000 AD, he's going to inevitably be in there somewhere. But at the same time, I don't want him to be any kind of reflection of another character, because he Batman Who Laughs is his own entity. So it's cool to kind of like think about these things and get inspired by other artists and the tones they brought to it. But hopefully in our miniseries, he's a whole entity into himself.
We talked with Scott yesterday, and he mentioned that this in some ways harkens back to Black Mirror. When you were drawing this, were you trying to incorporate certain visual cues from that time, or was it more just a plot or tonal thing?
More tonal, but we will put things in there. I'm actually only I still haven't finished issue 1. I've been coming to a couple of shows, so I'm like, when I get home, I've got a lot of work to do.
I won't tell Dan Didio. He's walking around. I won't tell him. Don't worry.
He knows. I mean, I'm here, and I'm here, for, like, talking about Batman Who Laughs. So. Scott's a very smart writer, and Black Mirror. Like, do you remember how kind of, for example, the James Gordon story? They started out as separate, and they just kind of became one, and you realised, all along this was like a big, kind of. What's the word? It was just far more connected than you might first realise, and there's absolutely things in Batman Who Laughs that are connected to James Jr.'s in it.
Right.
So we're going to have there's going to be touchstones that mirror Black Mirror. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Last question before we get silly. You did a lot with 2000 AD in the past. Yep. You've done a lot with them. How different, because we cover that, we cover the progs every week on the site, and we cover every strip in the prog every week, and it's such a different reading experience to read something 10 or 12 pages, 6 pages at a time versus 30 pages at a time, 20 pages at a time. As a creator, how different is it creating one type of story versus the other, or do you not think of it as different at all?
First up, thanks for supporting 2000 AD, because I think 2000 AD is a legend in the comic scene, so thank you for that. The main thing I noticed coming over to American comics was, obviously the longer format actually just allows the pages to breathe more. In 2000 AD, it is very condensed. Yes. You have to get an awful lot of information into those 5 or 6 pages. Also information that has a kind of cliffhanger and makes people want to read the next episode because there's episodic, format. So I actually, honestly though, I actually really liked coming to American comics because, having 3 or 4 pages for like a talking scene or an action scene, I actually just really enjoyed that extra room to, but coming from 2000 AD, learning to do it in 5 or 6 pages, I think sets you up really well for American comics, because it means that if you do have more room, you use it hopefully in a more considered way. Do you know what I mean? So both are great, but actually there's something nice about being able to let just a little bit more room to breathe for me that I enjoy.
Very cool.